We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. I want to thank Old Soul for joining us yesterday. She's an interesting case study. This woman goes out of her way to help so many people. I'm impressed, and she makes me tired sometimes. She was talking about going down to Texas to help women in women's shelters um, with the aftermath of the hurricane. Apparently, she left yesterday morning early and she's down there now. I told her to text me from time to time to make sure you're okay. She puts in a lot of extra effort, and it's not like she's not busy. She's got a job, she's got a kid, she's got a family, she's got young women coming through the house all the time whom she's helping. And then she does this other stuff, go talks at prisons, goes to Texas, goes to Colorado to watch over a young girl that she didn't even know. I got to tell you, she's better than most of us. And I appreciate what she does. For the life of me, I don't know how she finds the time or the patience to do the things she does. But I will tell you this, it's great having her on the show. She's a sharp young woman. I learn something from her every day. And I'll be honest, there aren't too many people I can say I learn from. Not because I'm so smart, it's just that most people are just repeating something they've heard. They don't have any real thought process to it, but not her. That old soul, she's always thinking. And I appreciate that in somebody. And she's not afraid to speak her mind. People always ask me, where is she on social media so I can follow her? I've said this before, I'll say it again. She's not on social media at all. Do you believe that? Well, I should say she's on social media to the extent where she will make comments on other people's platforms. That's how I got to know her here on the Rational Boomer podcast. She would make comments. And after reading those comments, I'd say, Jesus, you should come on. And I was right. She came on and she was so good. Now she's on a regular basis, and folks just love her. We've got some other new guests coming up sometime soon. Oh, hopefully this will pan out. It hasn't the last couple of weeks, but it looks like Ed will be back on the show tomorrow. I always look forward to talking to Ed. It's always an easy conversation. We know each other pretty well, and he's a pretty sharp guy in his own right. So hopefully he'll be here tomorrow, and that will make the show a little more interesting, a little more informative, and a little more entertaining. All right. Well, the big news yesterday, of course, was the press conference that Joe Biden had. It was highly anticipated. Joe has to go out and prove himself every day, apparently, even though he is president of the United States. We've got Democrats, Republicans, and the media attacking Joe from all sides, saying he should step aside because of that debate. Funny thing is, after the debate, that went pretty badly. I'll grant you that. He seemed tired or sick or whatever he was. But then he went off to North Carolina and did a rousing speech. And then he did a talk at NATO just a few days ago, and that was incredible. Then he spoke to a union group, and that was pretty strong. And of course, last night he had the press conference, and this was going to be the real test because everybody will say, well, he's just reading off a teleprompter. Anybody can do that. Well, that's not necessarily true. Donald Trump reads from a teleprompter, and he has a hell of a time. Fact is, most presidents do speak off a teleprompter. There was one radio station, too, that said, oh, Joe Biden wanted the questions in advance of the interview. Yeah, that's how it works. When you have the president of the United States talking to some shitty little radio station, they don't know who you are or what you're going to do. They're not going to get embarrassed live on the air. You're lucky you got the interview. And then, of course, you go ranting about it shortly thereafter. And then, of course, your radio station fires your ass, which is what they should have done. Anyhow, we had the press conference. People were anxious. They were waiting for that one slip that Joe Biden would make, and they'd pounce on it and exaggerate it and expand on it and just prove what they're saying, that Joe needs to step aside. And of course, there was that mistake. And the mistake is he was talking about Vice President Kamala Harris. And He inverted the word because Trump was in the middle of the conversation too. So he said Vice President Trump. Now I heard it right away and I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be the one thing they jump on. And of course it was. And the thing about it was a slip of the tongue. Everybody you watch on TV, everybody you hear on TikTok and in podcasts, they all make slips of the tongue. I do all the time. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. I have to be transparent here. When you listen to my TikToks, if you say, well, that sounded pretty good, I'll tell you a backstory about those TikToks. I have something in my mind that I'm going to say, and I start saying it. Frequently, I'll have a slip of the tongue or I'll go a direction I didn't want to go. And I will start and stop those TikToks 3 to 5 times, sometimes even more, because I can't get it coming straight out of my mouth. I'm 64. I'm a little less than 20 years younger than Joe. There isn't anybody who speaks into a microphone on a regular basis that doesn't have a slip of the tongue. It's just that they have this hanging over Joe's head and they're put him under a microscope and they hold him to a higher bar. Because let's be honest, if we took Donald Trump in that same scenario and we graded him like the way we want to grade Joe Biden, it wouldn't even be any comparison. You couldn't keep Donald Trump on track to speak on topic. You couldn't get him to answer a question. He would go off on tangents talking about crazy shit, but yet nobody is suggesting that he should step aside. And that's because the Republicans really have no other choice. They've got to go with Donald Trump. As I was saying in a previous podcast, their problem is even if Donald Trump is going to lose the presidency, and I firmly believe that he will, if he isn't running, the Trumplifucks probably won't vote at all. And then that affects all the down ballot candidates in the House and the Senate, state legislatures, the governors, and those sorts of things. So they need to hold on to Donald Trump, even if it means sacrificing the presidency. Otherwise, it will be the Democrats running the table. Now, it's interesting how all these people on the Democratic side are telling Joe Biden to step aside. They're saying crazy things. Well, the polls show this, and it's a guaranteed loss if Joe Biden runs. And all of that is conjecture and bullshit. The only thing we've heard about the polls, and I don't trust polls anyway, but the only thing we've heard about the polls is that they haven't changed much since the debate. Fact of the matter is, if you want to look historically speaking, no debate has really had any impact on the polls for decades and decades. But as I say, the Republicans want to jump on this because they need something to discredit Joe Biden. The media is happy to stir up the shit because that's ratings to them. And the Democrats, the question you must have for the Democrats, I don't know particularly why they're doing it, for power, for exposure, for whatever. But these Democrats better be careful because it doesn't sound like Joe Biden's going to step aside. And the fact of the matter is, the decision is all Joe Biden's. All these members of the House and the Senate and all these people don't have the authority to tell Joe Biden to quit. Joe Biden's a smart guy. He knows what the fuck he's talking about. And in this press conference, that was revealed to us. Now, Joe comes out. He's kind of slow. He stumbles over some words, but that's nothing new. He's done it his entire career. He's kind of soft spoken, and that bothers people because they want somebody ranting and raving like Donald Trump. Now, as much as these people want to talk shit about him, he was set up last night. I was talking about this on one of the TikToks because I heard a media outlet all but say this. They said if Joe Biden comes out during this press conference and looks bad, they're going to be all over him and the pressure is going to be harder. But if he comes out and does a good job, well, it won't change anything. Isn't that ironic? Joe Biden is under the microscope. He's being tested, but the Democrats themselves are saying he's got no way to win. And that's why I've said a number of times, and I sound like Donald Trump when I say this, but this is essentially a hit job on Joe Biden. Of course, the Republicans wouldn't be surprising if they did a hit job on Joe. They've done it before. You expect it out of them. It's a hit job by the media, and that's not surprising because of the fact that they will jump on anything that's bleeding in order to turn it into something bigger. But the Democrats, this is definitely a hit job by the Democrats. And the question is why? And it's hard to say, um, Old Soul brought it up yesterday about um, the elite in government, the people that bow to the wealthy folks. We think of only Republicans doing that, but of course there are Democrats too. And Joe is not making friends with the things he's saying, cutting taxes on the middle class, increasing taxes on the rich, getting health care, getting loan forgiveness. All of these things are things that rich people don't want to hear. And they don't want to see Joe Biden be president. They don't want Donald Trump to be president. So they're going out of their way to make him look bad. So they replace him with somebody else. Now, the presumptuous person to replace him would be Kamala Harris. And I would be okay with that. My problem with this is people are looking too much at the huge picture. Normally, I look at the big picture, but in this case, when I have a number of problems, my strategy is to take the problems one at a time. The biggest problem, take it first. People are going and saying, can Joe make it 4 years after he's elected? And I've said before, I don't care if he can make it. That isn't the problem here. The problem is November 5th, the election. That is a must win. That is absolutely a must win. Now, some people want to replace Joe with Kamala Harris. I say we do whatever we have to do to win the election on November 5th. And I assume that's with Joe Biden. Any other option offers up some serious risks. So Joe Biden wins the presidency or reelection of the presidency. And then if a year or two afterwards he's not feeling it, he's not up to it, he can resign. Then Kamala takes over as president. Then we're off to running the races that we want to be running. Because if we win the election, then everything else that follows afterwards, we have some control over our destiny. If Donald Trump wins, we can't do anything and it's over. So we need to do whatever it takes to win the election. And then afterwards, we'll deal with any problems that arise at that point. Say, Joe can't continue on. I'll be okay with it then. Kamala will take over and she'll do a fine job. All right, we've got a bunch of emails, as you no doubt expect. And the first one is about this press conference. It says, hi, Mike. If tonight's Joe had shown up at the debate, there would no longer be a debate about his fitness for the job. I don't want anyone but Joe steering this ship for the next 4 years. Thanks for what you do, Scott in Redneck County, Pennsylvania. Well, thank you, Scott. And that's really it. As much as these people will refuse to say he looked good, he did for Joe. Now, Joe is slow. He stumbles over his words from time to time. He's done that his entire life. This isn't something new. But he is slower than normal because he's old. And I made this comparison before. Let's take Michael Jordan, maybe one of the greatest basketball players in history. Now, Michael Jordan, I think he's in his 50s or something like that. As much as he was the greatest player in history, you put Michael Jordan back in the NBA today, he ain't doing jack shit. Not because he doesn't have the skills, but he's old comparatively. Doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the agility. It happens to all of us. We get old and things slow down. Like I said, for me, I've got a lot of things I couldn't do. I once did when I was young, but that's just the way it goes in nature. But these Democrats aren't willing to forgive Joe Biden. In fact, they put him under a microscope, and no matter what he does, they're going to come at him. Now, the thing about it is Joe Biden is the only one that can make the choice as to whether or not he is going to step aside. A lot of people think he can be pressured out. He cannot if he does not want to go. That doesn't mean that they won't try to convince him. He was asked if he would step aside, and he said, the only way I would step aside is if they could show me numbers that said I just could not win. And he said, but I haven't seen those numbers. And of course, the Republican or the Democrats will say, yeah, there's no way Joe's going to win, but there's no numbers that support that. As I've said, the polls really haven't changed much. And the last thing I will say about the press conference and the idea of him stepping aside and how the election is going to go. Everybody is worked up about the polls, how close they are, and that Joe Biden could lose. And this is a dangerous time for this country because it could mean the end of our democracy. And I get that. But the thing about it is what doesn't come into play in the polls is something we all know. First of all, the more they push Joe, the more people support Joe. They're pulling for Joe. The amount of reaction they're getting out of people says a lot more to me than polls do. But what they aren't figuring into this is the voting bloc that just refuses to vote for Donald Trump no matter what. Certainly all Democrats, some Republicans, and half of the independents. Well, that's significant. You can say they're tight in the polls, but there are many, many people that don't want to vote for Donald Trump no matter what. I've said this before about 2020. Joe had 81 million votes. Donald Trump had 74 million votes. An unprecedented amount of people that came out to vote. Okay, fair enough. The reason they came out and voted for Joe Biden wasn't because Joe Biden was so beloved at that point. He is now, but he wasn't at that point. The reason they came out is because they were scared to death that Donald Trump might become president again. These people haven't been comforted at all in the last 4 years. Not at all. They're more afraid. They're more concerned. More has come out about Donald Trump. So you think it's going to get better for Donald Trump in 2024? I don't think so. And then you throw on top of that that now we're finding out Joe is actually beloved in the Democratic Party by a lot of people. They'll go out and fight for Joe Biden. You factor in those two things, you throw in overturning Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision, 34 felony convictions, the tie to Jeffrey Epstein and the pedophilia behavior. I don't see how he wins, in spite of what the polls say. And I've said this before, and you can hold me to it if you want. I think Joe Biden not only wins, but he wins huge, maybe even a landslide. Now, Joe did say that there were other people in the Democratic Party that could beat Joe Biden or Donald Trump, and I'm sure that's the case. But he made it very clear he's staying in. So Nancy Pelosi can stop asking the question because it's been answered 5 times so far. You know, it was funny. And this tells me a lot about the media, tells me a lot about these Democrats that want to outsource Joe Biden. The other day, they said, you know, things were getting better. He did the speech with NATO. He was looking like he was pulling out of this. And then it went all to hell the next day. And I thought to myself, well, what happened? I don't remember anything big happening. And the answer to that is this, that Nancy Pelosi was non-committal as to whether or not Joe Biden should run. And that was bullshit. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Listen to her talk. She needs to take a cognitive test too if she wants to continue to be a representative in the House. But the other person who made a comment was George Clooney. And that was the whole reason the day was bad for Donald Trump, because George Clooney said he should leave and Nancy Pelosi was non-committal. That's it. That's the only two things that happened that made a bad, very bad day. And that's bullshit. This is grasping at straws, trying to grab anything to make it look good or bad for Joe Biden. And this is what's pissing me off. All right, let's move on with the emails. And Scott, thank you for your email. Next one says, good afternoon, Mike. I'm a big fan. I'm a Canadian and I live north of Toronto, and your podcast has become part of my routine on my 5K walk every morning. I'm such a fan of the U.S. I own a medium-sized printing company here, and we do business in the U.S., so I'm concerned about the long-term opportunities with the USA if Trump wins, God forbid. I've always said to myself that I'm going to send you an email, but never seem to get around to it. However, today definitely inspired me to send an email. Of all the guests you've had on your show, today was so frustrating to listen to. I tend to go on, so I'm better at just giving bullet points. Below, I have tried to give you an idea of where I stand about this guy as well as other topics. Now, I believe he's talking about Larry. Says, you let him off with this. I will not vote for Biden because he's clearly suffering from senility. How does he know? Is he a doctor? From what I can tell, he sells commercial insurance. He's not a salesman. I think he's a lawyer. I wish you had pushed back on this very specific comment from him. Number two bullet point, Biden's old. Everyone gets it, but I'm 62 years old, and I can assure you I do not have the vocabulary Joe has. Yes, does he have fuck up on occasion? But everyone does, and I believe he's owed the respect he deserves for serving as president in this upside down world we all live in. Yeah, he deserves respect for being maybe one of the most productive and successful presidents in the history of this country. He pulled us out of the abyss that is Donald Trump and COVID. That was quite a feat. As far as me pushing him, if he had been a Trumplefuck or something like that, I would have pushed him harder and it would have been adversarial in that conversation. I didn't want it to be adversarial. I knew I didn't have to push him because I didn't have to prove anything with him. I knew what would happen is he would say what he would say and there would be pushback by the audience. And that's what happened. I pushed back on some things. I didn't just lay down for this shit, but I didn't see it as an adversarial fight. I know his wife. I love his wife. She's fantastic. And I know the type of guy that Larry is. I've known many people like that in my life. And I thought it would be better just to spar with him. There isn't a reason to try to destroy somebody that I don't hate. You know, I don't know that we would sit around on the porch having tea and talking all day, but I didn't hate the guy. You know, like I say, I've known people like him, and I knew what to expect. And I didn't see this as a debate per se. All right, number three, he says, you also keep saying Joe is 82. He's 81. Does that make a big difference in the big picture? Obviously not, but I'm just a facts guy. Yeah, I covered this before. Another lady corrected me on this. He will be 82 toward the end of November. So after he's elected president, reelected president, he'll be 82. Does it make difference? No. Doesn't make a difference in the least. We got bigger problems to worry about than whether Joe's 81 or 82. But now that I know, I've rectified that when I talk about Joe's age. When he kept saying over and over that he will not vote for Biden or Trump, you just said nothing. That's bullshit. I did say something. You have always been very clear that not voting is a vote for Trump. I've never said that either. I think you should have also pushed back on this. I do believe he's a Trump voter, regardless. And for the sake of your conversation, he just played that I'm a true independent line, which to me was BS. Not once did he say that what Trump stands for was bad in the US. This is why I believe he will vote for Trump. I don't think he'll vote for Trump. Honestly, I don't. Because if he votes for Trump, I have a feeling Ilona will kill him in his sleep. That's what my wife would do, and I'm sure Ilona would do the same. See, the thing about it is this conversation you're taking too literally and too seriously. I didn't take it as a serious conversation. I wasn't in battle with Larry. That's not what I was doing. Now, if this Trump-lefuck that claims he's going to come on does come on, you'll see a much different situation. But I'm not going to tear into somebody just for the sake of doing it, especially when I'm not dealing with a real Trump humper. I don't think we're dealing with a Trump humper. I just think Larry likes to talk and he likes to debate and he likes to think he won. He didn't win this. Whether he thought he won with me or not, he certainly didn't win with the audience. Next, as a Canadian, it is so frustrating to listen to people like this. Trump is a cancer on your country and needs to be removed from the political stage. Just the fact that he would say he will not vote, he will not vote for both or either made it ridiculous to listen to. Actually saying he would vote for Kamala was a stupid statement. Doesn't he realize she's on the ticket? I didn't get the rationale of this dumb comment. If you vote for Joe, you also vote for Kamala. What's the problem? Well, and that's exactly the point. If you think Joe is feeble, which he clearly isn't, seeing what we've seen in the last several times he's spoken, um, and people want to put Kamala in there instead of Joe. Take the one chance where you know you can win. Put Joe in, and if Joe can't handle it after he's elected and the Democrats have control, well, then have Joe bow out then. I don't have a problem with that, and let Kamala take over. See, the big picture here isn't what's going to happen in 4 years. It's how we're going to win the election. And at this point, with the risk we're facing with this, we do whatever we can to win the election. And then we worry about the shit afterwards. The email goes on. So, to have this come to an end, the one thing that I keep struggling with is why the Democrats don't promote what they've done. If Trump had the economy, unemployment rate, stock market numbers, etc., the Republican Party would be throwing him a ticker tape parade every month. What a wasted opportunity the Dems are not taking advantage of. Well, I tend to agree with you. I'm growing weary of some of the Democrats as much as I am the Republicans. I would dare say I dislike them almost as much based on what they're doing. Not only are they not espousing the successes they've had, they're now distracting everybody from Donald Trump and the shit show he is by going after Joe Biden. These are fucking cowards. These are people that have no foresight. And frankly, I've said it before that after this is all said and done, I will never forgive Republicans for what they've tried to do. And the select Democrats that are going after Donald Trump or Joe Biden, I'm never going to forgive them either. They should get primaried and they should get booted because they're working against the Democrats and helping Donald Trump in the process. But I still believe that Donald Trump doesn't have a prayer. He's going to get whooped. He's going to get absolutely whooped. Email ends like this. Well, it looks like I went too long, so I apologize for the length of this email. Again, thanks for the pod. I do feel you're a voice of reason. Cheers, Glenn. Well, Glenn, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've got a couple of emails from Larry, too, and he's talking about wanting to come back. So, Glenn, if it makes you feel better, I'll get rougher next time around. Next one comes from Jennifer. She says, Hey, RB, I have been an intermittent listener since your TikTok days and migrated with you to the longer podcast format, which is great. I have previously been too timid to volunteer for a segment, but two things have accumulated to inspire change. First, your repeated encouragement and how much I have enjoyed your guest. And secondly, I started volunteering to campaign for the Dems. I've already learned so much that could benefit your listeners. I would love to chat further if you agree. Jennifer. Well, Jennifer, you don't have to have any special education. All you have to do is be a listener of the podcast. Then all you need to do is send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Tell me when you're available. I'll tell you when I'm available. We'll try to match that up and we'll get it done. Very simple. Not hard to do. And you don't have to think about it. If you talk to anybody who's been a guest, they will tell you that it's fucking easy. All right, next one comes from Anna. I'm listening to your podcast right now, episode for July 8th. I'm appalled at what Larry is saying. He won't vote for Biden because he's old. Meanwhile, the Heritage Foundation is readying a lawsuit against the Democrats for the moment they announce a different candidate. People like Larry are the reason we're here. Whereas Larry on term limits years ago, not writing to his congressman, I bet. It's too late to reorganize at this point. Larry needs to get over it and vote blue. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's a means to an end now. It's a matter of winning the election on November 5th. That's what we've got to do by any means necessary. You know, I have a lot of disagreements with Larry, and I'm having a feeling we'll have another opportunity to talk to Larry. Hopefully, we'll get him to stop with the fucking masks. All right, the next one comes from Charles. You've always said polls are not accurate. Look at the results of the recent France election. Charles. Case in point. In France, it was expected that the conservatives would win in a landslide. But what happens? The liberals win in a landslide. You couldn't be more wrong than those polls. And the polls are always wrong. 2016, 2020, 2022. They're always wrong. I don't listen to polls. Thank you, Charles. Next one says, Hi, Mike. I listen to your podcast daily. I'm also a boomer and share many of your thoughts and views. The main one now being the call for President Biden to resign, which I do not agree with. I believe it's too late in the game. Any vote that is not for President Biden is a vote for Trump. We must vote blue all the way to right all of the wrongs he has caused. Keep up all the great work. Keep up all the great work you're doing, Laura. Well, thank you, Laura. And I agree with you 100%. Listen, when Joe won the election in 2020, he said he would be a transitional president. And I took that as meaning he would only be a one-term president. And I thought that made sense. I even said at that point, I don't think Joe Biden will be the candidate in 2024. He'll be too old. It's not advisable for him to do that. And clearly, Joe Biden was thinking about that too. That's why he said he was a transitional president. But the unforeseen happened. You see, the Republicans fucked up. They essentially destroyed their party. When Donald Trump left office, they should have said, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you, and just got rid of him. That would have been the smart thing to do. But of course, the Republicans don't do that. They pulled him back in the fold. They sent Kevin McCarthy down to kiss his ring, kiss his ass, whatever the fuck he kissed. Sent him back there, brought him back into the fold. They thought it meant votes and they thought it meant money to them. And that's all that mattered. They didn't care about the country or the people in it. They cared about whether they could win or not. And they saw Donald Trump as a direct line to winning. Well, they were wrong because in the process, Donald Trump has pretty much destroyed the Republican Party. And when they lose in November, they're going to have to retreat and figure out a new plan because what they're doing is not working. So we need to vote for Joe Biden. We need to finish it with Donald Trump. Donald Trump will not go off in obscurity because he's got 3 trials he's going to have to address. He won't be a candidate for president. He won't be the president, and he'll be incredibly vulnerable. So those of you that want to see Donald Trump suffer after the election, for the next 5 years, you're going to see Donald Trump suffering. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We got some more emails to address talking about the press conference and those people that want Joe Biden to step aside. Next one says, Mike, you've likely seen this already. Michael Moore did an interview with Eamon on MSNBC accusing the Biden campaign of elder abuse. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. He makes it sound like there's more than we're being told about Biden's condition and ability to lead. Michael Moore. Michael Moore is a decent filmmaker and director and all that sort of stuff. Politically speaking, I don't know. He's joking around half the time. He's kind of a funny guy. I don't know what to take from him. And frankly, when it comes to Michael Moore or George Clooney, I really don't give a fuck about what their opinion is. These are elite people, wealthy people. They can't speak to me or any of us on our level. The fact that they happen to be on TV or slightly famous or whatever, that doesn't mean shit to me. So I don't really care what Michael Moore has to say. And the idea that the Biden campaign is guilty of elder abuse, this is just somebody trying to be clever and trying to be funny, and it's fucking not, especially when what's all at risk. He says there's another report that in his campaign, aides provided interview questions to hosts prior to interviews. Yeah. Is that a surprise? Jesus Christ, they will try to make anything out of nothing. President of the United States, I talked about this earlier, goes on a radio program and provides questions before. That's not surprising. You're going up and sitting in a live on air situation with some goofball. And trust me, I spent a lot of time in the radio business and it's nothing but fucking goofballs. You don't want to risk this guy asking something like, do you prefer tidy whities or boxers? Some dumb fuck, a radio guy, will ask that question or some question like that. So to provide the questions beforehand, we'll keep it on track to keep his narrative properly. The reason he's doing the interview is because he's fucking campaigning. And this radio person is goddamn lucky to have the president of the United States even take his questions. The idea that he's providing questions ahead of time, that's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. It's not unusual. It happens all the time. And it just goes to show that people don't know what they're talking about, or they'll grab anything and try to make it something. Now, the emailer goes on to say, I have no idea what you think of Michael Moore or his input. You do now. And I will be most interested to hear your thoughts on both these reports and what you think of how the White House is handling things. I'm sure that both of these reports, interviews, have people concerned and talking. Well, if they do, then they're paying attention to the wrong things. How do I think the White House is handling things? It's a different story. I don't think the White House is handling things very well at all. They didn't prepare Joe Biden very well for that debate. And if they had, we wouldn't be even dealing with this situation. They're not talking as much as they need to do. They need to be transparent. They need to get Joe out there and they need to change the narrative, but they've been slow doing it. So I'm not impressed with Michael Moore, George Clooney, or the White House aides around Joe Biden. The email continues on. Thank you as always, Mike. Look forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas, especially knowing how the news media gets people revved up. It's a bit surprising, I think, to hear Michael Moore say that he is accusing Joe Biden's campaign of elder abuse. That paints a pretty grim picture. No, that's a bad joke, is what it is. That's fucking ridiculous. Are you telling me that an 81-year-old man who happens to be the sitting president of the United States, who is guarded by any number of Secret Service, is being abused by his staff? That's a fucking stupid statement. It can't be serious because he can't be that stupid. Lastly, she says, glad to hear that you and your second captain had such a fun time on the water. Second captain, that's my granddaughter. Told that story. We took her out in the boat, told her I was the captain and she'd be the first mate. That wasn't good enough for her. She wanted to be captain. I said, well, I'm the captain, but you can be the second captain. She said, well, all right then. That's better. And it's signed by Judy Crazy Cat Lady, Portland, Oregon. All right, the next one starts out. Mike, Biden needs to keep riding that horse to the finish line. I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Here's why I'm saying that I've had conversations with two Republicans recently asking me, is there any chance Trump can win? I said, not unless you vote for Biden so we can beat that son of a bitch. They both completely agreed. Allen at Kansas City. There are those reasonable minds on the right, after all. Biden 2024. Allen. And the fact of the matter is there's a number of Republicans that understand the dangers of reelecting Donald Trump and the damage he will do to this country and to their party. There are many Republicans that refuse to vote for Donald Trump. Now, they may refuse to vote altogether, but that's fine. If Donald Trump loses a vote and Biden doesn't gain the vote, that's fine because they never expected to get the Republican vote. So, thank you, Alan. Next one says, hey, Mike, as we know, the news media today is like a soap opera. If they can grab something and shred it apart and regurgitate the same in a different thread, it is what they will do. Absolutely. As per Biden and the Democrats, it is too late to consider another candidate, regardless of stature. It is Biden that will win based on his legacy and not Trump, since many will vote for a more sane country. It is clear the stage of life they are both at is not favorable. However, there is no turning back at this point. Absolutely. This isn't an optimal situation, certainly with Donald Trump and an 81-year-old Democrat. It's not optimal. But like I say, if you were going to make that change with Joe Biden, you needed to do it at least a year, maybe 2 years ago, not 3 or 4 months before the election. That's just fucking crazy. I'll be honest with you. The people that think we should change, we should check their cognitive ability because they should be sharper than that. Next one says, as Trump said, I love the poor and the uneducated. They are the ones that do not listen to the news and obtain reality. The bottom line, fear. False evidence appears real. This is how many react. I'm impressed with your stand on the current issues. However, I'm a Canadian and what happens in the U.S. is important. Rita. Thank you, Rita. Appreciate that. All right. Next one says, I wanted to thank you for letting me be part of the podcast last night. It was fun. I wanted to share that my dad passed away today, fell asleep in his recliner, and never woke up. I need to share because my family went to Atlanta for my youngest birthday, and I'm alone in the house with the cats and the memories. My dad was a hard man, but he loved us. He never quit. He was devoted to his family. It's amazing the stupid shit you remember when a parent passes. I hope he finds my mother in the afterlife. Thanks for listening, Will, or Wilfredo. You remember Will from the show. He was on a few days ago. People love Will. I love Will. Very sharp, very articulate, has some great perspectives on what's going on. No doubt he'll be on again in the not so distant future. Now, this next one is about Will. This email starts out, Will was fired up. He's so smart. I enjoyed listening to the show he was on. I've been wanting to write this for a while, but keep forgetting. The older movie you referenced a few times on the podcast is Being There with Peter Sellers as Chance the Gardener, who's very childlike. Shirley MacLaine stars too. It's a great movie. Thanks, Peg HM. Yeah, that's exactly the one I'm thinking about. And what I'm saying, what I said about that is Peter Sellers was this guy that may be mentally challenged. I don't know what the circumstances were as in the movie, but he would repeat things you'd see in television, and then people would read into those things and act as if they're profound. Excuse me. And it was a very interesting movie, and I can't even remember what comparison I was making now. Maybe I should step aside from the podcast. I just can't remember shit. All right, the next one says, Hi, Mike, Jack T here. Wait, before you say not another long email, this is a mini novel email. I wasn't saying that, Jack. If you want to write long emails, cool. Goes on to say, I just had to say how much I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with you and Will, the rest of your audience, with us and the rest of your audience. It was so informative and thought provoking. I learned a lot listening to you and Will. Awesome show. And that's all I've got to say. I'll be in touch regarding joining you on one of your shows, although I'm hard pressed to see me added much more value than each of your other guests have. But I enjoy batting around some like minded ideas and any differing opinions that might come up. Later, Mike. That's Jack T. All right. This one comes from Rodney. Rodney says, Hi, Mike. Blue Dot in Central Ohio. More of Will, please. Fantastic points, fiery energy, perfect cuss words at the right time. Great episode. Rodney. Couldn't agree more, Rodney. And I'm sure Will will be back as soon as he's able. Next one comes from Craig. He says, Hey, Mike, I'm sending this email because of the Epstein files, and it got me thinking. The human circus peanut, I like that one. If you know circus peanuts, you understand the joke. The human circus peanut likes to give stupid nicknames to Dems. From now until the election, we just give him the nickname Doe 174 because that's his number in the Epstein files. Every time a Democrat talks about Trump, they simply refer to him as Doe 174. Drive that point home every day until November. Let the whole country, even the MAGA dipshits, not be able to think of him any other way. Best, Craig. I like that. Doe 174. Doesn't have quite the same ring as dipshit dirty diaper Donnie Trump, but I get what you're going with. And I like it. I like it. I may try that. All right. Here's one that you've probably been waiting for. I actually have two from Larry. Larry responds to all the negative responses he got. Starts out and says, Mike, I've read some of your viewers' comments. Wow. I never realized what an asshole I am. That's funny because everybody else apparently did. But I agree with your advice. Let it roll off the back. Not a big deal. I was, however, stung by the comment on the YouTube page where one of your viewers called me a blowhard. Ouch. I'm wondering if that's someone who diabolically blows on someone else's heart while they're undergoing open heart surgery. Yeah. What Larry is doing here, I saw that comment and somebody said he was a blowhard. Now, clearly, the person thought that's what the word is. What they meant to say was blow hard, which is an interesting characterization. But Larry's giving this guy shit because he used the wrong words. Gotcha, Larry. Some of the comments also show that much of the electorate views the world in a binary and myopic manner. Just because I won't vote for Biden, they automatically assume that I'm a secret Trumper. I despise Trump, no two ways about it, and would never vote for him under any circumstances. But as one emailer pointed out, if you dislike Trump and don't vote for Biden, you're, excuse me, you're essentially voting for Trump. And to a large degree, that's true. So it'll be interesting to see what Larry has to say about that, how he responds to that. Goes on to say also they heard that I'm in commercial insurance field and automatically brand me as an insurance salesman. I have nothing to do with insurance sales. I'm an independent consultant, and my clients have included companies such as JP Morgan Chase, Verizon Communications, Northrop Grumman, and TD Bank. I don't think those companies would be duped into hiring a blowhard. I'm writing to say I'd be happy to be on a future episode, but I'd like to arm myself with some information first. That's always good practice. As you know, I was on Monday's show about 2 hours after we scheduled it, and I did no advance preparation. You certainly didn't ambush me, and no, of course I didn't. I'm not accusing you of that. I enjoyed the exchange, but I had anticipated the level of scrutiny but had I anticipated the level of scrutiny by your viewers, I would have been better prepared to buttress my position with facts. So I blame nobody but myself. Plus, I have some additional masks and disguises that you haven't seen yet. I was a bit disappointed that none of the 15 or so comments that I read mentioned my clever mask. Oh, Larry, you had some clever masks? I guess we didn't see those. Larry, the joke's not working. I would leave the mask off the show. A mask. And in as far as preparation, I'll tell you what, I do a show every night, 1 hour every night, whether it be interviewing somebody or just doing the show like I'm doing now. I don't do much preparation at all either. We know what we know. You're a communicator. Let's not blame it on preparation. I tell everybody who comes on the show, don't prepare anything because we don't know where the conversation will go. We start talking and it goes where it goes. So it's very difficult to prepare. Anyways, it said, I'll get back to you within the next week or so after I'm better prepared and can figure out a time to get into the ring for round 2. Well, Larry, this wasn't a fight or a competition at all. And, you know, since it's my show and I can do whatever I want, and clearly I'm a genius, you didn't have a shot anyway. I don't know what you hope to gain by coming on again, but hell, I'm happy to have you on. P.S. Alona copied told me that after reading many of my comments on YouTube, she doesn't have to worry about any of your female viewers taking a shine to me. You exposed me as a jerk. Keep on keeping on, Mike. Well, Larry, I didn't have to expose you as anything. You did a fine job on your own. And I did tell that joke because I thought it might sting you a bit since you were enjoying trying to sting me. And then, of course, there's a second email that illustrates perfectly what I'm talking about. It says, Mike, I know you've seen by now that George Clooney has joined the chorus of people calling for Biden to step aside. This proves that not only he looks like me, but he also thinks like me. Sincerely, Mr. Alona. That's what we'll call him from now, Mr. Alona. And whether you look like, I don't get the impression you look like George Clooney or anything along that. But I think George Clooney is a dipshit because he doesn't know shit about what he's talking about. He puts a lot of money into the Democrats, so he thinks it gives him authority to say whatever he wants. And of course, he's an American, so he can say whatever he wants. But I think when we put weight with what a movie star says, I think that's a mistake. And maybe we'll take a poll next time. Does Larry look like George Clooney? You may want to check the comments on this one because I'm sure there'll be some. All right, the next one comes from Steve. I just want to share this link with you. On yesterday's show, Old Soul was saying about the Occupy Democrats meme about CEOs supporting Trump's campaign. Apparently, it wasn't true, Steve. I saw that, and I've seen that meme, and I've never really talked about it because I don't know where memes come from. But this meme suggested that all the mainstream media had CEOs that donated to Donald Trump. I checked the Snopes things out too, and they say it's not true, and that makes more sense that it's not true. Um, whether it's a big deal or not, I don't know. I don't care who donates to whatever. I care as to what the policies journalistically are on these media outlets. And frankly, I'm not pleased with any of them, including MSNBC. These are not journalistic ventures. These are entertainment. These are tabloid. And if we try to be informed by these outlets, we're making a mistake because they don't give us all the facts. They don't even give us the truth all the time. And that's including MSNBC and certainly CNN. Um, this one comes from Alan. It's a short one. Please have Larry and Old Soul on together, Alan. Yeah, I talked to Old Soul about that on the show, knowing who Old Soul is and how smart she is and what she feels about misogyny and those sorts of things. Um, and again, remember some of the things Larry says, I think are tongue in cheek. I'm pretty sure they're tongue in cheek. That's why I don't get too riled about it. Um, it's just not funny. That's the problem. It's not so much that Larry is saying egregious shit. It's just that his timing and sense of humor needs a little shining up. You know what I mean? But that would be interesting to have Old Soul on with Larry, and I could just sit back and watch and be entertained as a motherfucker. All right, next one. Last night in North Carolina, Trump slurred his words and had his pants on backwards. Perhaps he needs to step down as he can't even put clothes on correctly. Suzanne, the little old lady from North Carolina. I hadn't heard about the pants issue. The fact that he slurred isn't a surprise because he slurs at every fucking event. Why they're not asking him to step aside, I don't know. Now, the Republicans aren't going to do it because they don't give a shit. But why is the media not doing it? That's the question. Pants on backwards. What's that? What's that rap group where the two kids wear their clothes backwards? Maybe that's what he was doing. Maybe he's starting a new rap band. Crisscross was the name of the rap band. All right. The next one says, "Hi, Boomer. Irwin from the Netherlands here. Have you seen that picture of Jill Biden holding hands with Macron instead of the president? I saw it, zoomed in on the hands, and it's a clear case of a Photoshop, as her hand is clearly not in Macron's fist. Their attempts at discrediting the Bidens is so awfully pathetic. Anyway, check it out and debunk away. All the best, Irwin." I have not seen that. And the fact of the matter is, that kind of stuff is going on all the time. It's pointless to even acknowledge it because it's so ridiculous. I don't think it got much traction in the news as much as the Republicans may have wanted it to, but fuck them. That's the least of what we'll see in the coming months. All right, the next one says, "Hey, Mike, the shows with guests have been great as always, and I really enjoyed Andy today." You remember Andy? He was the Gen Z that was on. Nice kid, smart kid, a future politician, and that makes me feel better. I have a few things on my mind, figured I'd share. You spoke with Andy and many others regarding Project 2025. I do understand it will never happen unless the Republicans take the presidency, Senate, and the House. So while I do not think it's going to happen, I do think the public should be made aware of how truly vile these people are that wrote this manifesto. The public needs to be made aware of the entire thing, not to cause fear, but because knowledge is power. The more you know, right? Also, lately, Trump seems to be trying to distance himself from Project 2025, but it's just more bullshit. If you go to his website, he has what's called Agenda 47. This agenda mimics almost everything in Project 2025, just more right wing extremist shit we should all be aware of. You also have talked about how fed up you are with the media, including MSNBC, following the debate. I'm pretty fed up with the bullshit slant on everything, too. However, I feel the need to call out Lawrence O'Donnell and Joy Reid. I will concur with you. I listened to Joy Reid and Lawrence O'Donnell, and that's about it. Maybe, um, now those are the only two that I really feel confident of. I like Rachel Maddow, but she gets too far off into these stories and not sticking to the specific facts. When she is, she's great. I like her. But Lawrence O'Donnell and Joy Reid are the best on that outlet. They have both been standing up for Biden and not caving in to the stupid slant everyone else is spinning. Just want to give credit where credit is due. Another thing you mentioned is how the Democrats have been complacent in the past. I do agree, but I found a tiny silver lining in this. Prior to 2022 and the overturning of Roe v. Wade, most people were either pro abortion or against abortion. The numbers of pro choice were nowhere near as much as they are now. I think the court overturning Roe brought a light to the hundred shades of gray in this issue of women's health. It is not just for abortion, it is for our very lives in some cases. I think it brought many people to the side of pro choice. This brings me to the court that calls themselves supreme, but they are nothing but political hacks. The rulings they made this year, Chevron and the immunity, among others, while truly horrid, will have a profound effect on the election, possibly close to the effect of Dobbs. I think they overplayed their hand and it's going to bite them in their collective asses. We can only hope that Biden gets rid of the filibuster and packs the court. There has to be some huge changes made as soon as the Dems take office in January. As always, thanks for your daily efforts of getting the word out there. Your show has been exceptionally good with all the guests, but I still like the email shows. I do have one request. If you're going to do a live on YouTube again, please advise ahead of time. I'm never on YouTube unless it's for something specific, so it would be cool to know ahead of time. Thanks again, Deb from Delaware. Yeah, you're not the only one to suggest that. And that is a failing on my part. I just, when it comes to the lives, I just say, I'm going to do it. And I went on TikTok to do the live because it gets real busy out there and I can promote the podcast to a lot of people on TikTok. But then I got kicked off of TikTok because of the dumbass Trumplafucks. I appealed it, and then within an hour, they said, I'm good. Because, see, when they kick you off a live, they kick you off for a week or two, and you can't do another live. And that's why I went right over to YouTube. I did it all pretty off the cuff, and I apologize for that. I will do better in promoting it when I do it on YouTube. And I kind of like the YouTube one a little better. There aren't nearly as many people that come on. I mean, I can get on TikTok, I can get maybe 30,000 people that come through. And that gets a little hard to handle after a while. On YouTube, it's much smaller than that, but it's easier to handle. So I'm not doing this for followers. I'm doing this to interact with people that are smart and are open to learning some things and then using that to pass on to other folks. So I will do another live on YouTube and I will try to give you a heads up when I do that. So, anyway, some members of a panel of Democrat and independent voters on CNN, get this, changed their position on whether President Joe Biden should stay in the presidential race after the president's press conference Thursday, saying he assuaged their concerns. And this is something the media doesn't typically tell you, and I'm surprised this is on CNN. But there were a lot of people that weren't going to vote for Joe Biden because he was too old. After seeing the press conference, they changed their mind and said, no, we're cool with Joe Biden. A panel of 7 women in Michigan was interviewed just after Biden's press conference, which included a very telling component saying they still support the president over Trump. 2 of them initially said they were unsure if Biden should stay in the race, but after the speech, they changed their tune. CNN's Anderson Cooper turned the spotlight on CNN national correspondent Gary Tuchman, who watched Biden's press conference with a group of women in the key swing states. 5 of the 7 women said it was better than they expected it to be, while 2 said it was the same as they expected. The 2 individuals who weren't sure if Biden would stay in changed their mind, with one saying she is relieved, while another said he is the logical choice for Democrats. And I think you're going to get a lot of people who say that. You know, Joe wasn't a fireball out there. He was slow. He was stammering some, but that's typical of Joe. But everything he said was very compelling. And he revealed that when it comes to foreign policy, nobody knows more about that shit than Joe Biden. Just imagine Donald Trump in that same scenario. How might that a press conference have gone? Well, we know it would have been an absolute shit show. He would have been going off on tangents, making shit up, lying, looking like a fool, attacking people. You sat there and watched Joe. If you had to determine who would be a better president, if you could compare the two, there is no fucking question. All right, we're going to wrap things up here, but I have this last story. Mike Howell, the executive director of the Heritage Foundation and the creator of the Right Wing Project 2025, is threatening to ensure that hackers who broke into the group's blog site get raped in prison for releasing information about the organization's funders and contractors. I heard an audio tape where the hacker was talking to this Mike Howell. This guy is a little triggered. This guy is unhinged, and they know they're in trouble. They got hacked pretty easily. A lot of information was sent out. Amongst that information was that there was a lot of IPs coming from China, as if they are lobbying for China. It's ironic, isn't it? Donald Trump and all these Trumplafucks keep telling Joe's tied to China, but when it comes down to it, it's only the Republicans that seem to be connected. So, hacktivist group Sieged Sec, that's a new word, hacktivist. I like it. Apparently engaged in a conversation with Howell over Telegram, which it published online. In the discussion, Howell asked the hackers what they wanted, the New Republic reported. Mike Howell reached out to us at first to ask questions to understand our motives and why we breached his organization. Siege Sachs said in July 11 post, Cyber Daily reported that then he proceeded to throw insults, threats, and claimed our existence was against nature. And that's because they claim to be LGBTQ furries. Now, if you don't know what a furry is, I didn't really know what it was, but apparently there are some people out there, in this case, LGBTQ, but also enjoy dressing in animal costumes. I don't get it. I'm not going to I'm not going to insult anybody over it. You can do whatever you want. But apparently this was troublesome for the guy from the Heritage Foundation. Goes on, Mike Howell says, we tried answering things in a way to hopefully help him understand, but as his insults grew, so did our impatience. So we are releasing all of our chat logs with Mike Howell. In it, the hackers claimed their action was to let Americans know who is behind the Heritage Foundation, which is drawing up a Project 2025, a guide for a second administration crafted by allies of Donald Trump. It includes plans for a mass takeover of the federal government, the firing of civil servants, and their replacement with political loyalists. How many civil servants do you think are going to vote for Donald Trump now that they know this? That's a pretty good chunk of folks. Howell claimed he was in the process of identifying and outing members of the hacktivist group who call themselves the Gay Furries. Their movement has been operating for 2 years and includes hitting states that instituted bans on reproductive freedom. Do you think they really are gay furries? I'm thinking maybe not. Well, maybe they are. It goes on saying closeted furries will be presented to the world for the degenerate perverts they are. That's what Howell said. You cannot hide. Your means are minuscule compared to mine. You now can either turn yourself in or you can cooperate. And of course, the hackers didn't buy it. This is a typical strategy. I'm the bigger bully and you better do it or else. And the furry said, fuck yourself. I like that. None of our members will be identified or outed by your organization built on hatred. Well, that's already gone south on them. The only ones deserving of a destroyed life are those within your organization. You want me to cooperate with what? Spreading misinformation and hatred? We won't turn against our own people. Howell ranted that the members had turned against nature by dressing as happy-go-lucky animals. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. God created nature, and nature's laws are vicious. It is why you have to put on a perverted animal costume to satisfy your sexual deviances. It is why you are forced to hide like a coward. You violated our rights and broke the law. You have no standing to discuss such matters. Yeah, but they're doing it. They're exposing your ass. And for as tough as you're talking, you ain't done shit yet. And you ain't going to do shit. This is why I'm thinking these gay furries maybe just did that to particularly incite the Heritage Foundation. So I don't know if they're actually gay furries or not, but I get the joke if they're not. He went on with a vulgar threat of sexual violence in the federal prison. I'll put you in next year. The New Republic's report of the conversation said, you're going to put him in jail next year after the election. Well, a lot of good that's going to fucking do you. Such unprofessional language from an executive director. Would you mind if I shared this? In a later statement, the organization claims it was not hacked and that the hackers merely stumbled upon an archive on their website. You got a hacktivist who hacks your account and you say, we weren't hacked. That sounds like Donald Trump, doesn't it? That never happened. That's a hoax. That's fake news. Sorry, Heritage Foundation. They got up in your shit. The gay furries got up in your shit. No heritage systems were breached at any time. Lie. And all heritage databases and websites remain secure, including Project 2025. Not true. They wouldn't have the information that they released unless they hacked into your account. You're trying to make everybody who are your customers or clients feel better. But that's hard to do when the evidence and the documents are being released. The data at issue has been taken down and additional security steps have since been taken as a precaution. Well, that's kind of like closing the door after the cows get out, isn't it? That's what it sounds like to me. Sounds like the Heritage Foundation is a little nervous and good. And thanks to the gay furries, the hacktivists for getting into their shit and exposing some things. I think this is only the beginning. There's going to be some other hacking against Trumplafucks and the Heritage Foundation. I have a feeling these hacktivists are good enough. once this guy tells us that it's secure now and everybody can feel safe, they're going to get hacked again and again and again. And I think it's fucking hilarious. So the gay furries, fight on. We appreciate it. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.